Good morning, Mr. Lewis's fourth period. Today, on Lewis News, we are looking at the bloodiest battle in the war, the Battle of Antietam. We have some special guests today, Robert E. Lee, a Confederate soldier and the commander of the Confederate States Army, and George B. McClellan, a Union soldier, civil engineer, railroad executive, and politician. Here's a brief explanation of the Battle of Antietam. The battle took place on September 17, 1862, near Sharpsburg, Maryland, and Antietam Creek. It pitted Confederate General Robert E. Lee's Army of Northern Virginia against Union General George McClellan's Army of the Potomac, and was the culmination of Lee's attempt to invade the North. The battle's outcome would be vital to shaping America's future, and it remains the deadliest one-day battle in all American military history. Generals, introduce yourselves.
Hello, I'm Robert E. Lee. I am most famous for being the commander of the Confederate States Army. The Battle of Antietam is particularly one of my least favorites, not only because I lost so many of my men, but also because that coward of a man, George B. McClellan, took the victory.
Well, keeping it professional, I'm George B. McClellan, one of many generals of the Union Army. I would have to agree with Mr. Lee that this was not one of my favorite battles, even though the Union did take the victory.
Very nice. I have a few questions for both of you, if that's okay. Okay, let's start with you, General McClellan. Why would this battle not be one of your favorites, considering the Union won?
Well, once the battle was over, I got fired, and of course many of my men were lost. Like you said, it was one of the bloodiest.
Oh yes, I remember hearing about that. Why do you think you were fired?
Simply because I was trying to keep my men alive. Lincoln fired me for being overly cautious and not aggressively engaging Lee.
Do you think the fact that you let the Confederates retreat with ease back to Virginia instead of defeating them altogether played a role in Lincoln's decision to fire you?
Oh yeah, he may have mentioned that. And at the time being, I did what I thought was best.
That makes sense. Who is the general of the Union Army now then?
I was replaced by a fat pair of sideburns named Ambrose Burnside.
Oh, well, I can see that's a sore subject, so let's move on. So, General Lee, where do you think you went wrong in trying to win the battle?
Unfortunately, when I left to conquer more Union land, I left behind some key information about each of my troops' locations, which McClellan and his army discovered. Because of this, they knew when and where I would attack.
Well, that is quite unfortunate, I must say. Do you believe without this key information, you and your army would be successful and win the battle?
Oh, definitely. I was extremely confident going into this battle because of our success at the Second Battle of Bull Run, where we defeated the Union.
Interesting. Tell me more about the day of the battle. How long were you both fighting, and what was the combat like?
The battle lasted for about 12 hours, and the majority of fighting was done at close range. Most of my soldiers were within 100 yards of our opponent.
How many casualties were there altogether?
Around 23,000 men were lost. The casualties were heavy on both sides.
Wow, 23,000 men in a single day? General McClellan, what do you think the Union's success in this battle means for the future?
Well, because of my victory, President Lincoln now had the opportunity to issue the Emancipation Proclamation shortly thereafter.
Also, the victory, which might add was unrightfully stolen from my army, kept France and Great Britain from recognizing the Confederate States of America as an independent nation and providing the aid we needed desperately in the South.
Again, I'm going to remain professional, unlike my counterpart. And also, Mr. Lee, the question was clearly directed at me. Anyways, the result of the battle have already shown a huge political and public impact. The Confederates' failure meant there would be no quick end to the war.
That is true. I should also add that this battle was completely destroyed any hope for foreign intervention on my army's behalf. Since Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, no civilized nation would see against the defenders of freedom.
Very interesting. Thank you both for talking to me today. I know how hard it is for both of you to be around each other, so it is much appreciated.
You're welcome.
up, the Battle of Antietam caused the Emancipation Proclamation to be issued, and as you know, it was the bloodiest day in American history. That's it, folks, on Lose News. Oh well, I can see that's a sore subject, so let's move on. So, General Lee, where do you think you went wrong in trying to win the battle?
Unfortunately, when I left to conquer more Union land, wait,
How many casualties were there altogether?
around 23,000 men were lost. They were heavily.
Oh, well, I can see that's a sore subject, so let's move on. So, General Lee, where do you think you went wrong in trying to win the battle?
Unfortunately, when I left to conquer more Union land, I left behind some key information about each of my troops' locations, which McClellan and his army. Oh shoot! There's gonna be lead.
Good.
No, I know, but
I got
lead
the whole
is
hair flip.
I know.
How many casualties were there altogether?
Around 23,000 on both sides. A lot of men were lost.
We can just cut that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my god.
Do you want to redo that, or do you want to? We can just keep it.
You're welcome.